Hi, everybody, and welcome to episode number 446 of For Immediate Release. I'm Shel Holtz.
And I'm Neville Hobson. We're recording this episode on Monday, the 20th of January, 2025. A memorable day for many. In the United States, you have a public holiday, Martin Luther King Day, but you've also got the inauguration of a new president today. And Mr. Donald Trump is coming back for Trump 2.0, his second term of office. And it's kind of, I think, really appropriate that this day is also the day we're going to be talking about the latest Edelman Trust Barometer from the Edelman PR firm. This is an annual product. We've been reporting on it a lot over the last 25 years. And I actually remember, Shel, I think I was at the first, maybe or the second of these when they were done, 1999 to 2000. So it's been with us a long time, but we have reported on this quite significantly. This one, though, is, I think, quite different to what we've seen before in a number of areas. It's a weighty volume. We're not going to attempt to dissect the whole thing in this short form episode. There just isn't the time to do that or justice to do it. So we'll come back to it in our monthly. But we've got a few things we have to say about this, so we should get on with this. So I was actually over the weekend at Davos that Edelman unveiled the results of this trust barometer. It's the latest annual report on public sentiment of trust in governments, business, the media, and NGOs from a survey of 33,000 people in 28 countries carried out last October. Overall, the picture is a desperate one, I would say, showing that, in Edelman's words, widespread grievance is eroding trust across the board. Those with a high sense of grievance distrust all four institutions: business, government, media, and NGOs. We'll discuss the report and what the survey findings mean for communicators right after this message. We are living in a time of grievance, says Edelman CEO Richard Edelman, defined by a belief that government and business make our lives harder and serve narrow interests, and that wealthy people benefit unfairly from the system while regular people struggle. In this age of grievance, disillusionment with societal institutions, that's government, business, media, and NGOs, is pervasive and widespread around the world. According to the survey, 61% of respondents have a moderate or high sense of grievance. People around the world feel betrayed by leaders and left behind by societal institutions, government, business, media, and NGOs. The erosion of trust is across the board. None of the four key institutions are trusted universally. All face significant distrust among those with high grievance levels. Trust inequality, particularly among income groups, exacerbates the issue. In addition, aggrieved people distrust CEOs, as well as innovations like artificial intelligence. For any organization to succeed now and in the years ahead, its leaders cannot ignore grievance. A significant finding is that 4 in 10 people approve of hostile activism, where radical tactics such as online attacks, disinformation, and even violence are seen by many as viable ways to address systemic issues. Hostile activism is most prevalent among respondents aged 18 to 34, with 53% supporting these tactics. Over the last decade, society has devolved from fears to polarization to grievance, says Richard Edelman. Incumbents in the US, UK, France, Germany, South Korea, and Canada were ousted amid voter anger over job losses to globalization and inflation. He added, "We now see a zero-sum mindset that legitimizes extreme measures like violence and disinformation as tools for change." Other findings are many. They include globalization, recession, and technology fears. They are heightened, where the percentage of employees who worry about losing their jobs because of these forces has risen significantly since last year. Fear of discrimination surges. Nearly 2/3 of respondents worry about experiencing prejudice, discrimination, or racism, up 10 points in the last year, and with significant increases across countries and demographics, including among white respondents in the US. CEOs must take action. They have permission to address a societal issue. When their business contributed to the problem, it harms their stakeholders. They could have a major positive impact, or it would improve their business's performance. As communicators and leaders, we stand at a critical juncture where trust is in freefall, grievances are deepening, and the potential for societal instability grows. This is just a high-level snapshot, I should add, but clearly there's major concern about the state of trust and what to do about it. This crisis of grievance surely is a moment for decisive, empathetic leadership grounded in action and authenticity. Shel?
It seems that trust is declining precipitously. As you mentioned, it's across all four institutions. A couple glimmers of hope, at least for communicators working in business. First, business is still the most trusted institution and the only one above water. Among the four institutions, business has the highest trust level at 62%, and it's viewed both as competent and ethical, but still eroding. It's not as high as it has been in previous surveys. Another glimmer of hope is that despite trust challenges, CEOs are expected to address societal issues. So there is an expectation that business is going to do something about this. So I think communicators need to take this to heart and use it as at least to inform strategies for communication. And this would be both internal and external. I think we need to think about what the role of business is in societal change. And I can't speak for the rest of the world, but I know that here in the U.S., business is retreating from the idea of societal change right now with the Trump administration taking power today. They are retreating from DEI, for example, and yet that is one of the things, this idea of equity, that a lot of people are looking for and feeling that they're not getting because of that divide, largely between rich and poor. And that's one that just confounds me here in the U.S. because of all of the outpouring of support from business and from large sector of the population for the Trump administration. And yet the people who are going to be leading that administration have a net worth that is larger than the gross domestic product of most of the countries in the world. So you're being led by the ultra-rich. Some people are already calling it an oligarchy, and yet it's this divide of wealthy and not wealthy that is driving a lot of this grievance. But we need to be combating misinformation. We need to be engaging people locally. I think we need to have our CEOs and other leaders, and frankly, even our frontline employees, more visible in the communities, because when you know people, you trust them more. And it's easier to get a handle on what that organization they represent is doing in order to address the concerns that they have. We need to be cognizant of the risks that people perceive with technology and talk about how we're employing them and why this is perhaps good for the general population. We need to navigate the polarized societal landscape carefully. But mostly there's opportunities here for CEOs to position themselves as not just thought leaders, but empathetic and action-oriented people who can foster trust, particularly when they're addressing pressing issues that matter to people, that they have told us matters to them in this survey, issues like inequality, discrimination, and environmental challenges.
Yeah, there's a lot to take in from that, I think, Shel. You're right. The lessons for communicators and their clients internally, if you're in that sense, or externally, doesn't really matter, on taking a lead, an initiative, if you will, for authentic communication that addresses these grievances. I don't know, as we're talking, what form that might take. I don't think there's a single form. It'll depend on a lot of things. The flip side of that, I think, is the actual findings of dire distress and negativity across the board in all these key metrics. The one that worries me, in fact, many of them do, but let's pick one that worries me quite a bit, is the majority of people are convinced that wealthy people take more than their fair share. So the metric is quite staggering. 2/3 of people believe that they don't pay their fair share of taxes. And almost 2/3 believe that they are the cause of many problems. And you combine that then with hostile activism, and it's not hard to see, for instance, that dreadful murder of that healthcare company CEO in New York a month or so back. Some of what I've read subsequently, I understand. It's hard to even say that, but I do understand why an event like that might happen, particularly in light of some things I've read recently. For instance, and of course, this is where you then have to pause a bit and say, did I verify all this stuff? It was in a reputable journal that talked about there's evidence that they overcharge patients over 1,000%. And so there's a prime example. The hostile activism metric, the staggering too, the one I think that's the least worrying, because it doesn't involve violence, is intentionally spreading disinformation. 1/4 of the respondents said they're okay with that. And we're seeing it every single day. I think it's also combined, and this adds to the part of the grievance, certainly, but it adds to the destruction of trust, is the way in which leaders, and I'm using that word very loosely, including politicians, lie. They absolutely lie. They do not tell the truth. And so no wonder people don't trust them. And you then have, in my opinion, the egregious display of wealth by some people. And you'll know who I mean when I talk about those people sending rockets into space and do all that kind of stuff, that flaunt their success and wealth. And no wonder that's a wrong message sent. Then political leaders doing the same. And you mentioned Trump, who's taking office today. He's got to be a prime example here, but he's not the only one. So this all adds to this climate of this time of grievance that translates into this, where people feel that they have to take their own actions because they can't trust anyone. I think from a business point of view, where we're talking about what can we do for our employers or our clients to help them with this? Well, there's plenty. You just kind of at the bench on that, I think. But there's a bigger picture at stake here, and I think that would all contribute to stopping you achieving your goals in advising a CEO to be proactive. So what happens if a CEO addresses a group of employees that people feel empowered to criticize it right there and then, indeed insult the CEO, no respect at all? How do you navigate that kind of environment? How do you prepare? So all that is now top of your agenda, as opposed to not really a likelihood we need to get with a positive message. This is a tough time for this, I think, in light of stuff like this, don't you think?
It absolutely is. And one of the fascinating dimensions of all of this is the anger that we're seeing aimed at the ultra-rich. I've seen a couple of memes. I'm just going to point to two, and I don't have them in front of me, so I'm not going to be able to cite them word for word. But what strikes me about these two is not that they exist. It's that they are being shared repeatedly. I mean, I'm seeing these things probably 100 times on multiple platforms. One of them is a graphic of a very long list, and it says, where is the Elon Musk cancer clinic? Where is the Elon Musk?
I saw that.
Yeah, and then the other one has a photograph of Musk, Jeff Bezos, and Mark Zuckerberg with goofy smiles on their faces. And it says, how must it feel to go to bed every night knowing that you personally could solve world hunger and homelessness and wake up in the morning and still have enough money that you'll never be able to spend it all and still not do anything? And I've seen that one probably 75 or 100 times. So this anger at the ultra-rich, and I'm not going to make the case one way or another that it's justified anger. There are people who say if you work hard and make that kind of money, you deserve it. But that anger is real, and that's part of the grievance. And I think it is something that organizations need to think about in terms of their governance, of their pay packages, as they consider how prospective customers are going to respond to them as this continues to spiral out of control. Because frankly, I see this getting worse before it gets better.
Totally agree with you, Shel. And that example you gave is not a new thing at all. I can remember going back 20 plus years, a company I worked for at the time, and you had company cars and all that. And I picked up a Saab 900 turbo, very pokey machine that was outside the realm of what people expect of someone like me. And the job I was doing to be driving, they'd expect me to be driving like a Ford or something like that, or a Vauxhall. I show up in a Saab, beautiful car, it was great. And I remember getting pushback on this, snidey comments from people, snarky remarks at the time. And that is still the case now. So you subdue this now. So I think it is a big problem. I don't believe it will be solved without the help of government, but we don't trust government. So where on earth do we go from here with that in that case?
I don't know. I always appreciate people who are able to say, I don't know. All I can talk about is what business can do and what communicators can do in support of that. And I think it's helping to develop communication strategies that are two-way, that engage the local communities and engage the communities with which organizations interact. But I also think that there needs to be a rethinking of where the money goes. And I thought this was underway when the U.S. Chamber of Commerce announced that shareholders were no longer the top priority. But I'm starting to hear people talk more about stakeholder capitalism. Nobody wants to go down the socialism road for obvious reasons. But this idea of stakeholder capitalism, making money is good. We just need to make sure that it gets into the hands of the people who played a role in producing that capital, not just the owner of the business behind it. So it's something to consider if you want to stop the cycle that we see, because it's getting bad enough that pretty soon it's going to rear up and bite business in the ass.
Yeah, I think it's my kind of conclusive comment on all of that really is something that is not new by any means. It crops up all the time, which is listening. You got to prioritize listening, genuinely understand the concerns of stakeholders. And I really don't like the word stakeholders, a catch-all word that people dish up a lot, but employees, your customers, your investors, families of all of those people. And these are pretty socialist ideas, but they are universal in my opinion. And we don't do enough of that. And this must be prioritized, all that listening and addressing them. And yeah, this is important. Do you understand them, you the communicator, in the sense of aligning with the core values of your organization? You've got to tailor it to that. And so you can present a credible picture to everyone. So don't broadcast. You've got to foster meaningful dialogue. So that's my conclusion. It's not a new message at all.
Yeah, I think there needs to be at least two dimensions to listening. And I'm talking about with external communities, not internal communications. Right. But I think surveys are fine. But what we need is face-to-face. We need to start doing some town halls out there to understand the grievances, to ensure that voices are heard, to make sure that people understand that their voices are being heard. And then we need to figure out within our stakeholder groups, I'm fine with that word, by the way, within our stakeholder groups, which groups are affected by the issues driving this grievance, and then find ways to collaborate with them. We have to co-create solutions, and we have to empower these groups to feel like they're part of a decision-making process. I mean, helplessness is what drives a lot of this, feeling like you don't have any way to do anything about it. And if business can provide an entree for people to feel like they do have the ability to take part in the decision-making process other than going to vote on election day, that could help. I mean, we're just scratching the surface, but in terms of listening, I really think that listening, it doesn't have to be confined to face-to-face, but I think a lot of it needs to, because we need our people out there engaging. They need to see who these people are, meet them, kind of get to know them, because those are the people that you end up trusting. It's those nameless, faceless people that are making decisions, on the 72nd floor, and only come out with their bodyguards to get to their car that we tend not to trust.
Well, we have work to do, I think, Shel, don't you?
Plenty of it. Can't rest on our laurels at this point. I think we'll probably be talking about this when we get together on Saturday to record our monthly long-form episode, but until then, that'll be a 30 for this episode of For Immediate Release.
That's good enough.